On the couch we'll laugh and cry and feeling it all. Breaking down the big screen, the hits and the flaws. Grab your seat, press play, let's take the pic. Lights, camera, action, it's the Couch Critic.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Couch Critic. I'm your host, Nathan, and on today's episode, you're in for a treat. This is actually someone who's been on the show before, so I'm super excited about having her back on. Lucinda, go ahead, introduce yourself. I just told everyone your name, but tell us
Yes,
more.
that's all right. My name's Lucinda Sage Midgordon. I have a podcast called Story Power, and it's almost 5 years old this summer. And my sister Celeste and I just started a YouTube channel called Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters, where we take one movie and we analyze it. And I do a little bit of educational things because I used to be a theater instructor. And so it's really fun. That's two things I do. There are others, but I'm not going to bore you with all of those.
Well, that's awesome. And speaking of classics, that's exactly what we're talking about today. On my journey of Christmas movies, I've been through movies that I would never think would be considered Christmas movies, like Lethal Weapon. And now we're to a movie that I think everyone considers a Christmas movie. Everyone watches it every single year. It is a classic, and It's a Wonderful Life. Now, It's a Wonderful Life stars Jimmy Stewart as George Bailey, Donna Reed as Mary Hatch, Lionel Barrymore as Mr. Potter, and Henry Travers as Clarence. I've watched this movie like hundreds of times, a lot. And I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, I have kids now, but I just find myself becoming very emotional when I watch things. And I told my wife, again, I had seen this movie multiple times, but for some reason at the end of this movie, I wasn't sobbing, but I totally was tearing up. Tears were coming down my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a good movie. And one of the things I like to do on the show is I like to give our listeners a little bit of trivia, some things that they may not know about this movie. And one thing I found out, and I'm sure, Lucinda, you can share a plethora of things too, but one thing I thought was really interesting, and I don't even know if you know this, but apparently the director hired a marksman to shoot out the window in the classic house scene, and they were all ready to do it, and then Donna Reed picks up the rock to throw it at the window, and she actually does it herself because apparently she had played baseball in high school. And I just thought I never knew that. I thought that was really, really cool. A little bit of nice trivia for people out there who may not have known that. Now, Lucinda, you were nodding your head, so did you already know that?
Yeah, well, I love to go to Internet Movie Database and read all the trivia about movies. And so yeah, I read that, but more than once. But I also think it's interesting that this was her very first starring role. And so, I mean, I might have been a little nervous and missed the glass, if it was my first movie. But no, she nailed it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and
Um,
starring alongside Jimmy Stewart, who was obviously
really.
known. He had just returned from war apparently before this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and which is another
Mm-hmm.
trivia. You spoiled my little trivia questions, Lucinda, by telling people where I get my stuff from. But that's okay. I'll forgive you this time. But another thing I didn't know is Jimmy Stewart was extremely nervous about that kissing scene when they're talking on the phone because he had just come
Mm-hmm.
back from war. And yeah, but it's just like just those little moments. It's just so iconic. And
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why I was excited about having you on, because I remember when we talked about Casablanca and all the things that
Mm.
you added to that episode. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and tell the listeners just like everything that you know about this movie, like behind the scenes and all the history behind it.
Okay, so one behind the scenes thing, which is really fun, and I have to get Uncle Billy's actor name just a minute. I'm going to look that up. It's Thomas Mitchell. And you know that scene when they're having the party for Harry and his new wife, and Uncle Harry goes out uh, with George. He's going to leave, and he's pretty drunk, and he goes off camera, and then there's this big noise, and he goes, "I'm all right, I'm all right." Well, a prop person had knocked something over,
Oh my
and
goodness.
Thomas Mitchell was so on it that he just said, "I'm all right," and Jimmy Stewart's laughing because of that. I'm going to start coughing. Excuse me. So I love that scene. And yeah, that's a professional right there. And he was
Mhm.
he might have been doing it to try to save the guy's, the prop guy's bacon because, he could have been yelled at. I don't really know George Cukor, the director. I don't know much about him. But he might have, yelled at the guy because he ruined the shot. But that's of course the shot they kept. So
Yeah.
so it's
And
really
and
great.
and I know Jimmy Stewart uh is not a stranger to having to improvise, because I believe in a Philadelphia Story, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
that he had to improvise. I guess either he or Cary Grant hiccuped during a scene
All right.
and kind of caught each other off guard, and they had to continue
Mhm.
with that. So yeah, I mean, Jimmy Stewart is, I think, the quintessential classic actor.
Yes.
He had such a range. He could be in
Yeah.
a slapstick comedy 1 minute and then an Alfred Hitchcock drama the next. I mean, he could just do
Right.
anything. And so
Yes.
that's one of my biggest things about this movie that I love the most is just I think the acting holds up. There's not, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously there's little moments here and there that probably haven't aged well. Like if Mary hadn't met George, she would have been an old maid and things like that. But other than that, I think the acting holds up. The performances are
Mhm.
just things that actors today look at and try to replicate, but can't really do,
Right.
because you can't be Jimmy Stewart. I mean,
Right. Well, and I think that the ensemble works really well together.
mhm,
It's so interesting to me that Lionel Barrymore plays Mr. Potter, and he's such a nasty guy. But years before, he was in a movie called "You Can't Take It With You," and it's well, based on a play, and he plays the grandfather of the family, or the patriarch of the family, and they're really quirky, and they all have their hobbies that they're doing and stuff, but nobody really works. He used to be like working on Wall Street, and one day he went up in the elevator, and the elevator opened, and he goes, "No, I'm not doing this anymore." And so he stopped working, and everybody just sort of does their thing, and then it's so opposite to
yeah,
Mr. Potter, who wants wealth, and he wants everything. It's like he wants everything in the town to be his little
yeah,
domain. So that's really interesting. And I think it's also interesting that I can't remember if he had really bad arthritis, but he was in a wheelchair for a number of years. And they
mm,
always kept casting him because he's such a fantastic actor.
oh yeah,
And they just incorporated the wheelchair into the movies. Now, in the movie that I was just mentioning, You Can't Take It With You, he wasn't in a wheelchair. That was before he was in a wheelchair. But yeah, so and the themes of the story are very interesting too, because we really none of us know the impact that we have on other people.
mhm,
And so the fact that George gets to see that is amazing. And I don't know if you still do this, but I have a favorite quote from this movie that I think sort of starts George off on his final transition to realizing it's a wonderful life no matter what.
Yeah,
And
go ahead, share
that's
it.
and that's at the near the end when Uncle Billy has accidentally put the $8,000 into the newspaper that he hands to Potter, who's so unscrupulous. He finds it, and does he deposit it for them? No, he keeps it. Um, and George and Uncle Bailey have been everywhere trying to find the money. And he finally, George comes to Mr. Potter and he's trying to say, just give us a little time to find this money. And of course, Potter's going to call the police on him. And. So once he repeats something back to George that George said to him. He says, "You once called me a warped, frustrated old man. Well, you're a warped, frustrated young man." And that makes George feel like he's just worthless. And that's when he goes out and goes to he's going to jump off the bridge
Mhm.
because he thinks he hasn't done anything of value. And then he finds out, yes, he has done a lot of things of value. So, uh, yeah, it's just the reason it's iconic, I think, is because of that. Because, well, there's also the whole thing of, do you gather wealth and gain happiness, or do you gain happiness from creating a community of people who support each other?
Mhm.
And so there's that dichotomy too, in the movie. And another thing that I think is so amazing about this movie is that it was chosen in 2006 on American Film Institute as the number one inspirational movie. And they redo those every so often. I don't know if it still is, but that says something though. 2006, this movie
Yeah.
was made in what, 1948, 40, it was after the war. 46, 47, 48. And so yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I,
The message of this movie is just what makes it, like you said, it makes it a wonderful film. And
mhm,
that's one of my likes as well, is just the message is so relevant. Because
mhm,
I mean, especially, I mean, you were a teacher as well, and we don't know the impact we have as teachers on our
mm,
students. Sometimes we may not see the fruit of our labor,
right.
but we have to trust that we are making a difference, even on those rough
Mhm,
days, even where we don't know
mhm,
where the next meal is going to come from. We know that we still are put here on this earth to make a difference, even if it's just to one person. And that kind of goes to, um, kind of like my dislike. And it has nothing to do with the film itself. I honestly think this is a perfect film. I
mhm,
honestly do. From the message, from the performances, everything. My
mhm,
dislike comes from the fact that every now and then a studio or a streaming service decides to take a movie and destroy it. I don't know if you've heard anything about this, Lucinda,
yeah,
but Amazon decided to, for some
mhm,
reason, they thought that this movie needed to be shortened, which I will say that it may be one of my dislikes, is that at times it does seem a little bit long, but I also understand in the context of the film why they show everything they do. They want, in my
mhm,
opinion, they want the audience to feel the frustration that George feels, that
mhm,
just when you think he's getting ahead, something else happens, and something else that forces him to stay in a
mhm,
place where he has wanted to leave the entire film. So
right.
in that context, I understand, but I don't know if you've heard about Amazon's abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life. They have you heard of this?
No, tell me.
Oh my goodness gracious. So I heard about it first, and I didn't know exactly what they cut from the film, and as a person who doesn't like remakes or doesn't like when people touch classic films, I was very hesitant to watch it.
Mhm.
But I knew I was going to talk about it eventually on the show. So I took a look at it. And it's essentially the entire film up into the point where Clarence saves George from jumping off the bridge.
Mhm.
They go into that little cottage area with the lighthouse worker. And
Mm.
George says, "Well, it's not like you have $8,000 on you, do you?" And it cuts straight to George running in the street with excitement. And basically, it takes away the whole seeing what life would be like without him, seeing the
Mhm.
impact he had on all these people. And it basically goes to what you said, do we get happiness from wealth? And that's
Mhm.
essentially like what this
Yeah.
movie is saying. Like the miracle, the quote unquote miracle that Clarence gives
Mhm.
George is, here's all this money from the community.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about people who cut films or even miniseries because I've seen other ones where it just so happens they cut out the most essential part of the movie or the miniseries. The part that where the character turns toward what he's going to be in the end. He's making his decision or she's making her decision. Yeah, I don't know what it's like people who don't study films are the ones who are doing the cutting.
Exactly. Well, and I'm like, it's like, the common saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's
Right.
nothing to fix with
Yeah.
this movie. The only thing I think people, and at the time, people actually sent hate mail to the director just based on the fact that he does not give closure to Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter doesn't get caught. He doesn't go to jail for basically setting George up
Oh.
and accusing him of embezzlement.
Oh.
He basically gets away for framing George for something. But I think
Yeah.
the fact that he gets the money back, probably even more so, kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
deters people away from caring as much about Mr. Potter. But I just think it's a great film. I just think it's
It
perfect.
is.
It's just perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody knows what happened to that. I mean, Mr. Potter knows and his servant know that he's got the $8,000, but nobody else knows what happened to it. So he's not going to get caught. Unless he says, "Oh, by the way, here's the eight," you know, but he gets way more than $8,000
Oh yeah.
because, I mean, his friend, I cannot remember the guy's name who has the plastics factory that he wanted
It's like twenty five thousand
Mary.
dollars, right?
Yeah, he sends him $25,000. Now that for him, that's probably a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But he does it because he realizes that George has made a huge impact on the people in that town.
Mm-hmm.
And one more fun trivia thing that I found out today is that George Cukor based George's character on a real person. I did not know this. And his name was, let's see if I can find him, um, A.P. Giannani, and he is the founder, was the founder, excuse me, of the Bank of Italy. And then when it came to America, it became Bank of America. And it was the first bank
Oh
in the
wow.
United States to allow middle class people, people of the lower classes, to open a bank account.
Wow.
Before that, not middle class people, lower class people could not open bank accounts. Only the rich could open bank accounts. So I didn't know that before, and I thought that was fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's awesome.
So
Um,
George is doing that, and that's what irks Mr. Potter.
yeah. Yeah, he's helping people out, and Potter
Hmm.
is of the mind, I want people to have to rely on me to
Hmm.
get what they want. And so
Right.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
and that even that in itself is
I know.
relevant to today. I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not going to get into how that's relevant to today,
Mm-hmm.
but it is very relevant to today's
Mm-hmm.
world. So
Yeah.
that is It's a Wonderful Life. It's a wonderful film. It's to me, it's perfect cinema. So
Mm-hmm.
let's get right to our rating. So what I'm doing this season is, since I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing all Christmas movies, I'm doing two ratings. So I'm doing
Oh.
a Christmas rating, which
Mm, okay.
basically means how essential is Christmas to the movie that we're discussing. So,
Mm-hmm.
can you take Christmas out of a film and it still be a good film? For example, a Charlie Brown Christmas. To me,
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Brown Christmas is a perfect 5 out of 5 Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
The movie Elf is a perfect 5 out of 5 Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on that, is what would you give It's a Wonderful Life as a Christmas movie?
I have to give it a 5 out of 5 because I own the It's a Wonderful Life Village that we always put up every Christmas. And my mom gave me a sign that says It's a Wonderful Life that's still on the wall all year round. So I have to give it a 5 out of 5. And we watch it every year.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. And
yeah.
so I'm assuming, for just a general rating, then, just based on a as a film itself, I'm assuming a 5 out of 5 as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with Frank Capra.
Oh yeah.
And all of the people in that movie. And even though I mean, I think it was a hard movie for James Stewart to do because he was right out of the army. And I guess Lionel Barrymore had to talk him into doing it because he was kind of going through some PTSD and depression and stuff. But he did say this character was his favorite character that he ever played because it's true. You don't know. Even in war, you don't know the good effect that you have on people. Yes, he killed people, but how many people did he save?
Right. Well, and then of course I'm going to give a perfect 5 out of 5 for both Christmas and general rating. It
Mm-hmm.
is just so good. So I just have to say to my friend Katie, who reviewed this movie a couple seasons ago, you didn't know what you were talking about then, and you still don't know what you're talking about, because this movie is classic. I still remember the fact that she didn't even remember who played George Bailey when she reviewed this movie. And it still hurts my heart to this day just thinking about it. But I still love her, and she does appear on the show every now and then. Still, I still give her that permission. So, Lucinda, thank you so much for being on the show. Please, again, tell people how they can hear more from you in the future.
Story Power is on almost all of the outlets. I even do a little gerrymandering with pictures and stuff for YouTube, but it's on Apple and Spotify and Amazon, and it's on my website, Sage Woman Chronicles, on WordPress. Where else is it? Anyway, and then Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters is also on YouTube. I have only uploaded a few videos. We're still waiting to be approved because we use scenes from movies and you got to
Oh,
get
yeah.
approved, by YouTube um, for that. For the first two, I have two of those in the can, but I have little like teaser trailers for those movies. And yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, Lucinda Sage Midgordon, hyphen or no hyphen. Oh, it's all right. It's all right. I'm okay. I crash.
Yeah. Well,
um,
thank you again for coming on the show. And I'm
yeah.
actually going to give a little hint of what the movie I'm going to be talking about next
Ooh,
Tuesday. So I'm going to do a quote. Don't guess if you know, but here's the quote right here.
I'll shut up.
Why is there always someone who brings eggs and tomatoes to a speech?
It's not just a movie, it's a way of life. We'll watch it together, day or night. So settle in close and don't miss a flick. This is the moment for the couch critic.